There it is.
Directamente de Washington DC. Saludos amigos y amigas de Breaking News. Miren que hoy estamos en un episodio más, un capítulo más. Que te habla, hola Carramos Luis, estoy con Enrique Fernández y Arturo Ferrer.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, Arturo. ¿Cómo estamos, bebé?
Bueno, estamos de nuevo, además de Carlos otra vez, ¡en vivo! Y no te doy la pesca.
No se puede. Estamos en vivo. Gracias a todos, gracias a todas por sintonizarnos. Al episodio de hoy le pusimos por nombre Having a Beer with Matt Brynildson. ¿Quién es Matt Brynildson? Nada más y nada menos que el maestro cervecero de Firestone Walker, que precisamente hacía una de mis cervezas favoritas, que es la famosa Wookie Jack, Double Jack, Easy Jack, todos los Jacks. Ellos son los creadores de todos los Jacks, you know? So, how you doing, Matt? Welcome to Breaking News. Brilliant Coffee. For us, it's an honor to have you here in our podcast, our show, our live podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and the honor is all mine. It's really a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Matt. We know you're a busy guy. Got a lot going on, but we really appreciate it. You're basically a brewing idol for us, and I think the whole brewing community. So we really, really appreciate your time. I'm gonna open my beer.
Rapidito.
Let's go to the beer.
I've got a special one today.
Oh, nice.
Nice work.
Has sent it just for today, a special. I pulled out my Firestone Barrel Works Teiku. Let's go for it. Oh, nice, awesome.
Arturo, what you are having?
I'm having something. It's like here in Puerto Rico, it's kind of hot right now, but I have
Oh,
nice, classic.
Very nice.
And I have this one.
Ooh.
Wow.
We all went for the exotic stuff.
Very nice. Vintage reserve.
Yeah,
Definitely.
So,
are you having you had a beer there, Matt?
A parabola.
Yeah, this is a Mind Haze IPA right here that I'm having.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, cheers.
Pura madera, mano.
Salud.
Thanks for being here. We'll get right into it. Before we get into the more sort of in-depth like brewing stuff, we always like to ask our guests, and especially since we have such a special guest, how did you first get like interested in the world of beer? How did you get into this great industry?
Oh, well, you must have a lot of time. It's a long story.
Go ahead. We have time. Don't worry.
As long as
my start is a pretty common story in terms of the fact that I started as a home brewer, and it will date me, but I did my high school and college years in Kalamazoo, Michigan in the early 1990s. And so, we didn't have the internet resources and the books, and there just weren't as many players in the homebrew world. I had Charlie Papazian's kind of, Bible to homebrewing, Randy Mosier's books. I had, a few of those kind of first generation texts that were, mostly homebrew texts. But the beautiful thing was that I was living in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and that is home of Bell's Brewing Company and Larry Bell, and now John Mallett, who is the brewmaster there. And so honestly, my story really begins with tasting really good craft beer from Bell's and just falling in love with, at first it was porter. Later it was Two Hearted IPA. I actually got to taste the very first batch of Two Hearted in Kalamazoo right off the tank with Rob Scala, who was the kind of innovation brewer or the experimental brewer at Bell's at that time. And this is when Bell's, I think, had a 15-barrel brew house and open fermenters that they still were stretching cellophane over the top. I mean, that's,
Wow.
Larry was a home brewer at heart from the very beginning. He had a homebrew shop, so I was able to buy all my supplies there. But, most importantly, I was able to interface with the brewers and bring my homebrew down to the brewery and get an honest opinion from, professionals essentially at that time, although it was quite some time ago. And so that was the inspiration, and that got me into homebrewing and got me into brewing in general.
You were getting some fantastic feedback then from very knowledgeable people back then.
Yeah, I mean, what was cool was that I could go down there and buy bags of grain. It was a college town, so all the homebrew I could make, I could find people to drink college parties. For a while, I was brewing homebrew under contract for some fraternities and some college parties.
Nothing goes to waste.
No,
Even the flops.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem.
But the most important part was that I practiced through repetition, and in fact, my homebrew partner is a guy by the name of Finn DeMink, and Finn DeMink went on to start Southern Tier Brewing Company in kind of upstate New York, and is a real powerhouse brewer, a really creative brewer on the East Coast. And after our home brewing years, he went on to brewing school at one school in California. I later went on to Siebel Institute. And my first professional job as a brewer was working for Goose Island in Chicago.
Nice.
Wow.
And Finn later came and worked with me at Goose Island. I became the head brewer. He later took on the head brewer role after I left Goose Island. So it was a great time to learn brewing, and there were, a number of really good breweries just getting rolling in those days. In fact, when I joined Goose Island back in, this would have been 1996, they were just opening their Fulton Street production brewery. So prior to that time, they were just a really awesome brew pub in Chicago, and you would have to go there to drink the beer. Yeah. And so I really cut my brewing teeth at the production brewing facility for Goose Island.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Excellent school.
Matt, when and how do you became the brewmaster of Firestone? Because you were always learning from these exceptional breweries, and you get a lot of experience. How did you get to be the brewmaster of this great, awesome Firestone brewery?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, it was a couple things. So when I was working at Goose Island, that brewery grew really quickly. In fact, we made 25,000 barrels of beer in our very first year of operation as a production brewer. And so, they always say it takes 10,000 hours to learn a trade. I did that really rapidly by working my tail off in Chicago, along with a number of other really great brewers. Another brewer that I worked with there is a guy by the name of Jim Seebeck. He's now the brewmaster for Revolution Brewing.
Revolution, yeah.
And is responsible with his teammates for that barrel aging program and all those awesome beers. I brewed with, it was just a long list of really great brewers that were coming out of Siebel and then working at Goose Island as one of their first jobs. But, what was funny is that whole time, having read all of the, the Zymergy magazines and the New Brewer magazines, all the references were to West Coast breweries like Ken Grossman at Sierra Nevada, Anchor Brewing Company, Mendocino Brewing Company, North Coast Brewing Company. So even though we were making great beer in the Midwest, I kept thinking I needed to go to the West Coast. And
to the action.
Yeah, I considered it the big leagues of craft brewing, that I needed to get there. And to be honest, when I got to the West Coast, I came to realize that there was just as good a beer being made in the Midwest and the East Coast. But I really wanted to go there, and my hope was that I'd be rubbing shoulders with, Ken Grossman and all these great brewers, and maybe a little bit of that magic would rub off, through osmosis or other. But I took a job at what was then called Slow Brewing Company, SLO Brewing Company.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, I see.
And it was a brew pub that started in 1988. So it was one of the originals, and they had just built a production brewery. So really they were following this same model that we had seen in other parts of the country. And they kind of offered me an unbelievable deal. You know, they're like, come out to California, you know, we'll pay you twice as much to make half as much beer and build our program. And I probably should have done my homework because I took the job. I left my perfectly good brewing job in Chicago, Illinois. I moved to Central Coastal California, which was God's country, just absolutely gorgeous, vineyards, rolling hills, beautiful part of the world, brand new brewery. And within 1 year, that brewery went out of business and was sold to Firestone Walker. So you asked how I came to Firestone Walker, and you know, I was just part of a fire sale.
It's like an osmosis.
Oh man.
So what's that? That's what San Luis Obispo, right?
Yes, that's the name of the college town, and that's what Slow Brewing Company was named after. But you know, it was actually a really cool story because I came out to Slow Brewing Company in 1 short year. We were able to double the production, so we went from something like 10,000 to 20,000 barrels. And you know, one of the really interesting things was that we won Brewery of the Year at Great American Beer Festival that year. But still, the brewery was sold to Firestone Walker, despite it all.
And it was sold because, I mean, they went bankrupt, or what was that?
Yeah, essentially, they couldn't support the production brewing business, so the owner went back to just running his brew pub, and he sold the production brewery to Adam and David, who at that time were making about 9,000 or 10,000 barrels of beer in this beautiful little outbuilding behind their winery property, and it was literally just in the back 40 of their winery, and they had exceeded the capacity of the brewery. They wanted to either build or buy a new brewery, and it was just kind of right time, right place. And when I met Adam and David, so it's Adam Firestone, David Walker, their brother-in-laws that both have vineyards. Adam's a third-generation winemaker and vineyard operator. So they came out of, you know, alcohol production, you know, beverage business, knew the distribution business. But, you know, if you compare winemaking process with brewing, you know, there's some big differences in how we do our business in terms of sanitation and monoculture, fermentation, all those kind of things. So they were great businessmen in the wine business. And I think what I brought to the table was the brewing.
The brewing knowledge. And
And so ultimately, in the end, it became this really great partnership and wonderful career where I was working with, you know, really knowledgeable business people that had a lot of experience and just needed a little bit of help in the brewing artistry side. And so it's really been a great ride. I've been with Firestone Walker now for almost 21 years.
Wow.
And I've seen the brewery through a lot of interesting changes, growth, and of course, a lot of really great beers.
You're the heart of the of Firestone, you know.
I mean, it was
the heart.
It was a great partnership for everybody involved, because I mean, Adam and David got a hold of you, which, I mean, at that time you were probably feeling like, whatever, I'm just another brewer trying to make it. But I mean, you ended up being one of the leaders.
I'll be honest, I was pretty young and cocky, and you know, I thought I was a shoo-in for the job. I thought there was no way they were going to take anybody else to run this brewery. I was the guy, but apparently I was in a list of people, and, you know, no, I'm just kidding. It worked out really well.
I'm sure that right now they're both thinking back like, damn, we're very lucky that we got a hold of this guy,
but you know,
because, I mean,
I feel the same way, and you've probably interviewed other people that say that it's really a team sport. Brewing is. And you can have the most brilliant brewmaster in the world, but if they can't get the beer out to trade, or have the right marketing, or have the right story, or just have enough bandwidth to get the whole project done. And I think that's what's like, I think my favorite breweries and some of the most successful breweries have been stories of really good partnerships. You know, I can name a million different examples, but I think that most of the time it takes more than just one quote unquote genius or great artist to make a brewery work for sure.
Matt, what was the first beer that you brew as a brewmaster of Firestone?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because the one thing that I had become known for a little bit in that short amount of time of brewing was, kind of hop forward beers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came on board with Firestone Walker, their flagship beer was Double Barrel Ale, which we still make today. It's a beer that's fermented in medium toast American oak barrels. So it's a really unique process that I didn't create, that Adam and David kind of created with their then brewmaster, Jeffers Richardson. A really unique process, but it was very malt forward. And then they had a pale ale and a lager beer that were also very malt forward. So the very first thing they asked me to do was to formulate a hop forward pale ale. And so that beer eventually became Pale 31. And it's had a couple different names over time. I think we just called it Pale Ale originally, and then eventually Pale 31. That beer went on to win probably more awards than any beer we ever brewed. And it was a simple 4.5% alcohol beer, dry hopped with Centennial hops. And of course, I was taking notes from Two Hearted back in Kalamazoo. I was taking notes from Celebration Ale that was just up the road from us, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. So back in those days, Centennial was really the cool kid hop.
The cool kid.
It was the mosaic of the day.
It was before Simcoe and before Amarillo, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the OG of the new guys, of the new kids.
Yeah. It was like Cascade and then Centennial.
Wow, Centennial, nice. Wow.
So
Matt, exciting hop. It's an exciting hop.
Yeah.
So Matt, after those basic like OG beers, so one of your most famous lines, the Firestone lines, is the Jack line of beers: Union Jack, Double Jack, Wookie Jack, Easy Jack. I don't know what the latest Jack is. Maybe there's another one after Easy.
Yeah.
How did you
Fly Jack?
Fly Jack? Right. How did you come up with what was the process to make up this line of beers?
I've always said that we've never been. I don't consider myself necessarily a cutting edge brewmaster. Maybe I'm a fast follower at best. I think that Firestone Walker was very methodical in building their portfolio. And believe it or not, I went to the West Coast to learn IPA brewing, and Adam and David didn't let me brew my first IPA for the company until 2006. Wow. So I'd been with them for, 5 years before we actually launched an IPA. And mind you, we're in the middle of California between Stone Brewing Company, Sierra Nevada, and Lagunitas.
Yeah.
IPAs everywhere.
Yeah.
And
it's like you were drinking IPA from everyone, and I don't have my own IPA. What's happening right now?
It's so true. It's so true. And I kept asking, and they kept, Adam always said, we're going to do very few beers very well, and it's not time. And I think it was also because Pale 31 was a hoppy beer, and it was doing so well for us. But anyway, in 2006, we launched Union Jack. And by that time, I had the opportunity to really study Pliny, Sierra Nevada's beers, Stone's beers, Lagunitas' beers. And I tried to kind of put together all the things I loved about the West Coast IPA into that one beer. And that's a 7.5% alcohol, Centennial. You mentioned earlier Amarillo. Citra had just come available in about 2006, so Citra went into that beer. And so again, we were using what was at that time a lot of the new cool kid hops. It was double dry hopped. It always has been since day one. And it went on to maybe be the only IPA that won back-to-back gold medals at Great American Beer Festival the first year it was out, the first 2 years it was out. So it was a really big success for us. And sure enough, it became the best-selling beer for the brewery from 2006 to 2012, it was the best-selling beer for the brewery.
It's quite a few years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of
I
figures.
still remember the first time I had these beers. I got from a friend in California. He sent me a box with a couple of them, and I was like, I mean, I had tried a bunch of really good beers by then, but it was still, as soon as you open the bottles, it was like,
Yeah, I mean,
what the hell
it-
is coming out? What's this aroma? What's
I
this?
think the first time I tried a Firestone was I was in USA. I didn't know that Firestone, but I I see the box
Oh yeah,
and I see this could be a great beer. If it's coming in a box. I'm a art director. I work in
yeah.
advertising, and that gets me on. It's like, oh man, I feel like this is something special. I have to have it.
Arturo goes for the pretty packaging.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, but the
I-
best thing is the liquid. It was the beer that was
yeah.
the best thing.
It's interesting that those beers out of our vintage barrel age program, and right now we have Eric Ponce, who helps run that program and is one of the creative directors in that whole program. Those are my favorite beers to ship around the world. Those, along with the Barrel Works beers that Jim Crooks is making right now. I get really excited when I see those in faraway places, like when I travel to Brazil or Argentina, or if I travel
Yeah.
to Europe or to Australia and I see those beers. I know confidently that they're going to be in good shape. They're just robust, great beers for shipping. If I see Easy Jack far away from home, or I see any of the IPAs, as well as I, they just
Yeah.
don't travel well. And in this day and age, there's so many good IPA brewers all around the world. I'm selling myself short and my company short, but you're better served drinking the freshest beer you can get your hands on when it comes to those beers.
Yeah, of course.
And it's the barrel aged beers that really have the kind of the shelf stability that last when you ship them. So,
And I think that's also part of what makes you guys so brilliant in what you do, including guys like you, like Vinny Shilurso from Russian River. You sort of understand that, take baby steps and not go in all the way unless it's like for the best of the whole industry. So kudos to that. Also recognizing
yeah, I mean, so Firestone still sells more than 80% of their beer right in California.
Wow.
And so, you're talking about most of the beer is sold within a one-day truck drive away from the brewery. And we still sell, most of our beer between kind of Paso Robles and Los Angeles. We just have this amazing local following, and we can put really short shelf lives on our beer, so we know that it's consumed fresh. We have a cold chain program, and that's why we haven't been as big on the export program. I mean, we have sent some beer out around the world, but it's kind of diminishing returns. You want to have the best experience possible for the beer drinker, and it's hard to deliver that when you have to put the beer in a container and ship it halfway around the world. So
maybe
okay.
something like this.
Yeah. I would be
Fantastic,
excited.
by the way.
I would be excited if I saw one of these in Puerto Rico.
it'd be
I
great.
love the Wookie Jack.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
IPA.
Wookie Jack. So I don't know if you guys have been to Los Angeles recently. I know it's been hard to travel with COVID and everything, but we opened up a small R&D brewery in Los Angeles, in Venice Beach, called The Propagator. And one of our great brewers from the team moved down there, Sam Tierney, and he's been kind of a real forerunner in our innovation program, working on that small brew system down there. And you talk about Wookie Jack. We took it out of the lineup a couple years ago, but now we're brewing it on a fairly regular basis out of the Propagator, and even doing some canning out of there. And in terms of like where innovation starts for our brewery now, that's pretty much the epicenter of our kind of test kitchen, so to speak.
Matt, you early say to us that you are not a breakthrough brewer, but you were one of the first that tried to make a European type of beer to the market of the USA. And you know the beer that I was talking about is
Are you talking
the
about
famous
Pivo?
Pivo Pills. It's
Ah.
and you made that maybe 10 years before that it was happening right now. Like it's a comeback. Everyone is getting their hands making good pilsners,
Beautiful beer.
and you were one of the first ones that made that breakthrough. You know,
Yeah.
tell
Well,
us about that beer. How did you came with the idea to make this kind of beer in the U.S. market?
really it was, I think it's a common inspiration for a lot of brewers, but it's traveling. And, I've really had the opportunity to travel a lot, especially in Europe. I'm a huge fan of German brewing tradition, of English brewing tradition, of Belgian brewing tradition. And so I just kind of spend all the spare time I have, and all my spare dollars, I guess, too.
Well spent dollars.
Yeah.
But, the interesting part about Pivo was that every time I went to Europe, I would fall in love with lager beer and Pilsner beer. But when I would get back home, I wasn't sure that we could really sell it or that it would have a place in the US market. And then I tasted a beer from Birrificio Italiano from
Yeah,
Agostino. And he was doing a very light but impressionable dry hop on his Pilsner beer, Tipo Pils.
tipo
And I
pills.
give him full credit for turning me on to this idea that we could actually sell some meaningful amount of Pilsner beer and turn people on the West Coast when it was so IPA driven.
Mhm.
But and I'm sure this is true where you are too. It's like I think every craft beer bar, no matter how many tap handles they have and how much hazy IPA and double dry hopped and imperial stout they sell, there's always a place and a time for a Pilsner beer. And
Amen.
I'd go to the Tornado in San Francisco and I'd drink a bunch of IPAs and stouts, but I'd always finish with a Moonlight Pilsner beer. And
Yeah.
I might have 3 of those at the end of the night because they were so drinkable and so thirst quenching and refreshing. So,
Yes.
God bless Pilsner. And I think,
Yeah. No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay.
yeah.
No, make your point. Make your point.
Well, my point is just simply that I think there's always a time and a place for Pilsner beer. And it does my heart really well to see a lot of brewers around the world getting back to brewing lager beer.
Yeah, I think that the market of the US is I think they want the lager. They want the lager, but it's a revolution of the lager because we need that kind of beer because too much haze is too much zen. I always, if I go to a bar, the first thing that I order, if I see a pilsner, I order a pilsner, the first one.
Yeah, and it's true too, and I think it's also a test of a brewer. I feel like we all know that lager beer is a little more difficult to make, especially a really clean, balanced Pilsner beer. And man, if a brewer can knock that one out, they can do just about anything. I think it's a great beer. It's taken me many years to figure it out myself, and it's played into some of the new beers. You talked about the fact that there's a trend coming back to maybe the pendulum swinging away from hazy IPA. And, I love hazy IPA. I'm drinking one right now. But I think there's also the pendulum swinging back to West Coast IPA. And, our new release for 2022 this year is Hopnosis. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to try it, but we put a good year's worth of kind of R&D into almost reinventing, what we were doing back in 2006 with Union Jack and reintroducing kind of a new world IPA that's not hazy, that's, relatively clear and very hop focused, driving a lot of new cool hops into it, using cryo hops. And I've been inspired by West Coast IPA lately.
Yeah, going back to the classics. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all a bunch of cycles basically in the industry. It's what we've been seeing for the last couple of years. and we're sort of, I think, in another one. And beers like, and I mean, I'm the everything I drink is IPA most of the time, but I'm with you that whenever I see a good pills, especially something like Pivo pills, which is
Yeah.
kind of the best of both worlds. It's still got the hop fix for that we're sort of looking for, but it's so clean and crispy and drinkable
Gotcha.
and refreshing, which is one of the ones that we wanted to talk about is one that Jorge went to. He got lucky and was
Yep.
able to taste it recently.
So, mhm.
Which tell us about the beer.
Yeah, talking about the collaborations, like we know that you make a collaboration with talking about lagers, you do a collaboration with Russian River, the Stevo, and also make a collaboration with other half the Pivo Snaps.
Oh man,
And he has it.
Yeah.
So I have it right here.
that's amazing. Yeah.
It's a beautiful brew. How how this happened? How because
You know,
we know other half they are hazy, like you say, and
Yeah.
they are making like a lager. So
it's what's funny is that just about every time, I would say 90% of the time, I'm called up and asked to do a collaboration. The brewer wants to make a Pilsner with me. And it's because of Pivo. And so what we ended up doing when Sam from Other Half called me up and said, it was their 8th anniversary. They were going to do 8 different brewery collaborations. So Firestone was just one of them. But he wanted to make 2 beers. He wanted to make Pivo, or a version of it, this Pivo Snaps. So he wanted to make a Pilsner beer. And then number 2, he wanted to make a West Coast IPA. So, and both beers turned out really, really well. I think the Pivo Snaps is interesting. The twist there is a little bit of adjunct. So it's a lighter bodied beer,
Yeah.
but it uses Saphir, the same hop that we use for Pivo. And they brewed that in their Washington, D.C. location brewery when they did the West Coast IPA in the Brooklyn brewery.
right now I am on DC. So
Oh, nice.
That's how he got it.
That's why you got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
I'm here in the hotel, the hotel here.
He took a vacation at the perfect exact time.
Yeah, it was great. So I went out not for I went out and did the tasting. We did one tap takeover at Rockefeller Center, one of their new tap rooms on the Manhattan side in New York. It was amazing. A bunch of people showed up, and for me, what was so cool to go out there was to get to taste their beers fresh at the source. So of course I drank a lot of hazy IPA along with my Pivo Snaps.
Ole.
Really nice brew, really aromatic, really nice. I love it. So,
and that's I would take it as a massive compliment that you're saying every time somebody asks you to brew with them, they're asking for a Pilsner, not a because I mean that's great, especially coming from such a knowledgeable guy in the hop.
The hop
world.
forward. It's like,
It's
two of the biggest.
Yeah, but you got to remember, it's like I already know how to make a Pilsner. So when I do a collaboration, I'd like to brew something I don't know how to make.
For you, it kind of sucks, but for everybody else, it's pretty impressive that they're asking.
I want to expand my knowledge, and you say I want to expand my knowledge too.
Exactly.
So, Matt, one of the things that you talked about earlier is spending your free time on trips and learning and trying to try all the different types of beer and stuff around the world. You recently went on a sabbatical to Belgium. That must have been the trip of a lifetime. What was that like? And when you were there, how do you compare their brewing methods to what's being done in the U.S.? Is there something specifically that stood out to you, or that you thought was going to be different, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really mind-opening opportunity. So there's no secrets here. Duvel Morgat, which is this famous brewery, 150 years of brewing tradition. They've probably forgotten more about brewing than I've ever learned over the course of time. So the opportunity to go there and work for a year was this absolute dream come true. Duvel by itself is just an iconic beer. but the brewery makes, just an amazing range of beers, from wit beer to Belgian Golden to, Abbey beers, and even some really cool stuff, IPA and other things like that, barrel aged beers. So it was a little bit of a two-way street. I mean, I went there to learn classic Belgian brewing. Hedwig Neven is the brewmaster there. He's been there for well over 20 years. But at the same time, I got to participate in some New World stuff. I got to help fill barrels for their barrel-aged Duvel. Actually, there's a bottle of it sitting right here on the shelf. I got to work on their pilot brewery and help formulate some new beers, some dry hopped beers, and work on some new stuff. So it was this really interesting blend of me spending time. I got to spend time at the Leafman Brewery and see how sour beer was made there. I got to spend time at the Schoof Brewery and see how those Belgian beers are made in Wallonia. I spent some time at De Koning Brewery and saw how just classic Belgian amber pale ales are made. So it was just an overwhelming amount of exposure. Not to mention that I spent, weekends going to Cantillon and
wow.
and all the other wonderful breweries around Belgium. And
of course,
I made some really great friends and connections. So, now the trick is, how often can I get back so I can hang out with my friends in Belgium?
Was it like a one-way street for you, just knowledge coming in for you, or do you feel like you were also able to share some of your techniques and experience with them?
Yeah, no, I definitely got to help formulate some beers. So the project that I worked on most of the time there was the preliminary work for a new beer that Duvel released called 666. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a yellow label beer. And, I worked with the team there because what we were trying to integrate was some New World techniques into a Belgian golden ale. So there's some fermentation hopping and cryo hops used in that beer. I can't tell all the secrets, but I got, the great honor of working on a beer that made it to production level brewing in Belgium. And like I said, I also helped them with some barrel aging projects and some other pilot work. When I was there, COVID hit and the brewery didn't shut down. And what I ended up doing was just sequestering myself in their pilot brewery. And I probably brewed more in that year than I ever brew back at Firestone, because, I'm always supporting the team, sitting in my office, doing all sorts of other things. But when I was in Belgium, I was the guy on the kettles, like turning the pilot brew over. So it was really fun.
Sort of went back to your roots.
It was awesome. Yeah.
The daddy work.
Fantastic. And it all comes back again to the hops and your knowledge of hops, which sort of is a segue to something that we want you to share your input on, which is how the hazies have really influenced the West Coast IPAs nowadays. What's your take on that?
No, I think it's a really great point, and I think most of us, kind of older school brewers who were, when you go to classically trained brewing schools, you're told that clear beer is the goal and that hazy beer is somehow, flawed. And to allow yourself to kind of be open to the hazy IPA world, for me anyway, it took a little bit of time. But that being said, our best-selling IPA is Mind Haze. And it was kind of an overnight success for us. We always take a little different approach to those things. And as I mentioned earlier, we usually take our time in trying to develop them. We don't feel like we have to be the first one on the street. Mm-hmm. Through that process, we learned a lot about hops and a lot of the really tropical forward, Southern hemisphere hops, but also some of the stuff coming out of the Pacific Northwest. Hops I'm sure you're familiar with, like Idaho 7, which I'm absolutely in love with. Yeah. Azaka, which has a very distinct pineapple characteristic. even Cashmere, which is a public variety that has a really
I love
soft,
Kashmir.
peachy fruit character. Those are all hops that we deployed into Mind Haze, and then later we came up with Double Mind Haze, and then in this last year, like I mentioned earlier, we reformulated our West Coast IPA and came up with Hopnosis. But it took all of those things that we learned in hazy IPA brewing in terms of the hops, and we applied it to a new school West Coast IPA, which has a lot of that tropical, fruit forward hop aroma, but with the sensibilities and, well attenuated, well bittered West Coast IPA, and all the drinkability that comes with that. So, exactly what you said. I feel like I had to go through the whole hazy IPA phase to get back to making kind of new school West Coast IPA.
So taking a bunch of the what everybody loves about hazies, which is like this incredible aroma and the flavor of the hops, like this pure hop flavor, and just like mixing it with the base, with the clean, dry base of the West Coast.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, and I suppose there's some debate amongst the best hazy IPA brewers whether this is necessary or not. But one of the tricks that we deploy into our hazy IPAs is some of this kind of mid-fermentation dry hopping and adding hops when there's yeast activity and trying to drive some of those really thiol biotransformed flavors into those hazies, which results in the beautiful tropical character.
Yeah.
And now we're doing that in our West Coast.
Yeah.
We're using Mosaic Cryo hops mid-fermentation to try to drive a lot of integrated tropical fruity flavor into this West Coast IPA, and it's working. And I'm totally hooked. It's amazing. Yeah.
So very tropical sense. It's like taking the backbone of the West Coast and making with the new hops, fresh hops,
Hopping
tropical hops
techniques
with the new techniques. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
So Matt, you're literally a hop chemist. When you said you were at the Siebel Institute, that's what you did at Siebel, right? You ended up being basically a hop chemist
Well, so when I graduated from college, I had this chemistry degree. I thought I was going to go on to some type of advanced education, either medical school or some other kind of master's or PhD program. But I took a break, and it wasn't Siebel per se. I went to a company called Kalamazoo Spice Extraction, which was doing hop extracts and had a hop chemistry division. And in those days, there were very few companies that had that expertise. And I just kind of fortuitously fell into it. And I spent about 3.5 years, working as a hop chemist.
That's like the coolest sounding
it is. I know.
job ever.
When in fact I was basically a lab rat. I was doing all of the basic R&D science that needs to go into anything like that. But it was an incredible education. I mean, I learned all of the hop chemistry by working through it, and it was very valuable. I mean, it was a great segue into the brewing industry, because I essentially came where most people were coming from kind of the artisanal side and the creative side. I was coming from a little bit more of a science-based side. And it's served me well in terms of production brewing and really being able to brew with consistency and also understand hops. It's a fascination of mine that's just carried through. I mean, I'm still, I can't wait for hop harvest. I can't wait to travel and do hop selection. I can't wait to meet hop growers. It's kind of my passion in the brewing business for sure.
And with that more scientific knowledge about the hops than most people, how do you did that change your approach to selecting hops for your, like, how do you, like, the profiles that you select for your beers, the combination of hops, is it based entirely on your aroma and flavor profile, or is having this scientific knowledge actually changing the way you compose your recipes?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it certainly has an influence, because I feel like over time we've had the opportunity to look at it from both angles, both the organoleptic, aroma, the things that we're attracted to just simply through rubbing and smelling hops, but also understanding the kind of chemical composition that we're looking for. But at the end of the day, I think it mostly is chalked up to experience. I think the more time brewers spend exposed to hop growers and learning, that is a whole nother art form. It's a whole nother world and science. The better it is. I don't want to take any credit away from anybody. I feel like, the more time you spend with the farmers that grow the grains and the hops and the raw materials that we use, the better beer you're going to make,
Yeah,
period.
George have been there,
Yeah, I
Many
mean,
times, yeah.
in Washington to the harvest in September.
Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing.
So magical.
It was like when we get there, it was like a dog in the window smelling the hops all the way.
In their
Yeah, and we just wrapped up harvest in the southern hemisphere, so all the New Zealand hops and the Australian hops have been harvested now, and I wasn't able to travel there this year, but I can't wait to get back to southern hemisphere harvest as well.
I want to go there also.
Yeah, we have to go there, yeah.
It's another
We should
bucket
go.
list.
We should go. We
Ole.
should make a special podcast from the harvest.
Yeah,
Yes.
from down under.
Special
Bang on
time,
bar.
special timing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, how do you see these new trends of breweries that regularly make IPAs, and now they are moving to make lagers? Do you see there's a comeback? What is happening in the
In the
how
industry.
do you see
Yeah.
it in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. I think the pendulum does swing back and forth between, extreme beers,
Mhm.
but it always seems to come back home to beers of, immense drinkability and balance and sensibility, lower alcohol as well. It is a crazy trend right now, and I love that people are getting into not just making lagers, but, digging into the history, getting into decoction, understanding even the pouring techniques with side
Yeah, side
Ooh,
pouring.
beautiful.
Yeah.
and focusing on foam. Back to my time in Belgium, I think that was one of my biggest take homes, was how important foam is and how important the presentation of the beer is. And part of this lager movement is presenting brilliantly clear, beautiful beers of the right color with the right type of foam. It's just magical, right? I mean, we always talk about the theater of pour and how much we drink with our eyes.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love it. It's easy for me to understand it because I've always loved lager beer, and I
Yeah.
just couldn't figure out why everybody else wasn't.
Yeah.
So passionate.
And the chemistry and the science of the lagers, the pours, it's the same beer, but if you try to pour it in one in so many types of it's another beer. It's the same
is.
beer,
Right.
but
Yeah.
taste it's another beer. It's like this is the same beer that I have. Kike have some. I think it's the only one bar
we-
in Puerto Rico that have the side pour.
We
Every
recently
time
got
that he
a
have a pilsner, he tries to
Yeah.
make the side pour. And it's another thing. It's another experience.
Another experience. Yeah.
yeah. We recently got a Luker at our bar down here in Puerto Rico, and it's crazy. I got it because of a good friend of ours that bought one, Ramon Torres.
Kike Ramon Torres.
Saludos a Ramon. Yeah,
Kike
Kike.
is a really big fan of you, Matt. He's
Definitely.
a really big
Yeah.
fan. Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
Shout out.
this homebrew, which is one of the top 5 homebrewers on the island, the guy's super talented. He got one for his like homebrew pilsners
Yes.
and stuff with Luker, and he's like, "This is amazing. You guys have to try it." Then I went to Denver with Jorge. We went to Bierstadt, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna buy this."
I
thing.
have
There's
to-
no
I have
way-
I need one.
I have to
There's
get-
no way I cannot have this. And it's what Arturo says. It's crazy to see the effect of the foam, of the same beer poured in different ways and different styles. It definitely has some chemistry going on that changes
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And back to finishing the question, I think that the longer that you brew, I mean, one, the technology is available to more brewers. I mean, you have, good water filtration systems like RO that more brewers have access to. They have brewing systems where they can do upward infusion and decoction brewing. You've got, you've got all this knowledge that we're building as craft brewers. And what do people end up focusing on are what seem like the simplest beers, but like you said, can be the most beautiful beers when poured correctly at the right temperature in the right glass with the right foam. Just is such a great experience. And I'm so stoked that people are catching on to that. And I hope our beer fans catch on to that as well.
Yeah.
Because when we used to think in lagers, we think on the commercial ones,
Yeah.
But then you have a really nice lager. It's another experience. It's another world. It blow my mind. So it's not the.
It's like
it's another thing,
even we the home brewers, like we make lagers in our house. It's like this thing is awesome. We make these things. Imagine the best of brewers, and you try their beers. It's like this is another experience. It's wow,
yeah, and
man.
I think the other thing that draws brewers to these lager beers is that they're highly technically difficult to perfect. And as you go through the brewing kind of phases, and I won't take anything away from hazy IPA, but a lot of brewers have kind of figured that out. And now they're challenged by lager beer and finding that it's even a bigger challenge, more difficult to make. It's really fun,
Yeah, it's like a decoction, and then you try. I will make a double decoction, and then I will try the liquor. I will try. I don't know. It's stepping up. I don't know. Yeah, I think we are in the golden zone of the beer industry in the world right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you think. So and I don't know if any of you have had the chance to come, but we have our Firestone Walker Invitational Beer Festival.
Wow.
And it's been going now for the better part of 10 years, and we try to invite brewers from all over the world. And I always encourage them to bring one extreme beer, some crazy beer that, is really unique to their brewery. But I also encourage them to bring one of their very sessionable beers, a Pilsner beer, a Helles beer, a Wit beer, a Kolsch, something that, they're very proud of that other brewers are really going to enjoy to drink. And to be honest, when I go to that festival every year, the thing I get most excited about is going around and tasting everybody's Pilsner beer.
Nice. Yeah.
Light stuff. Yeah. That's what I think most brewers at the end of the day go home to their fridge and it's all full of classic clean beers.
Yeah.
For sure. Talking about the lager and the IPA thing and especially the home brewing and brewing part, if you had to pick one, if you had to give out tips for home brewers for lager and IPA, what would you say is the number one thing? Like, do this and you're gonna just make your beers better.
Well, gosh, I mean, I can think of a few things, of course, and sanitation is always the simple thing that, everybody says. But, really it comes down to, for me, it's yeast health and yeast propagation. I always think that if you take that extra step of making sure that you get your culture to a really, proper cell count, even if you don't have a microscope, but just doing some math and making sure that you work your culture up before you brew the real deal. A strong and healthy fermentation solves all sorts of other issues along the way. So, I think the more that home brewers learn and focus on the yeast, the better the beer they'll make. And I always say simple makes best. Don't complicate your recipes. Sometimes, 2 or 3 ingredients is really all you need to make a great beer. As long as the yeast is happy and healthy.
Yeah. That's the thing that Quique Ramon Torres says. You have to be very careful with the cell counts. If you have the cell counts, you have a great beer.
Yeah.
Cell counts is the key.
Beer, yeast starters, and just having everything for both, for IPAs and lagers. That will be your
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted me to separate it out, I mean, obviously with lagers, if you're going to be successful there, that yeast culture piece is so critical to a good lager fermentation. In fact, I'd almost say that I would say it's more important to have a healthy yeast culture there than be so methodical about the temperature of the fermentation. Obviously, it needs to be cooler. And then when it comes to IPAs, I think what I always try to tell people, whether I'm talking to home brewers or professional brewers, is, a cascade is not a cascade is not a cascade. In other words, hop quality is so critical to making a great IPA that I would rather just choose the freshest, best hop, regardless of variety, before I would get so fixated on variety. And if you smell and rub your hops and get familiar with what really fresh hops should smell and taste like, it'll improve your IPA game exponentially. And even if you're a home brewer, if you can make friends with a professional brewer and get some nice fresh hops from a pro brewer, rather than maybe some, and there's probably some great homebrew shops out there too, so I'm not taking away from them, but opposed to something that's really old or freezer burnt or not cared for, you'll make a lot better beer for sure.
I mean, you're bringing back a couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity to go and brew a collaboration beer with Leatherback Brewing at their tap room, their small brewery in St. Thomas. We did an anniversary beer to celebrate our 5th anniversary for the craft beer bar that we own back here in Puerto Rico. And as soon as we opened those bags of hops, the first thing that Ramon, that was with me, says, it's like, dude, this is so much better than the stuff we get back home in the bags. And it was like, we used Simcoe. It was Simcoe Cryo. We used Mochueca, Simcoe, and Amarillo. All three of them were so. The whole freaking building started smelling like
man.
And you just knew you were gonna make a good beer.
For sure. You just feel like this is, it's sort of like going to the fruit section and just picking out what's fresher instead of what you want.
It's like a restaurant. It's like the fresher the ingredient is better. Yeah. You're not gonna get a great fish from 1 month. You get the great fish from cut of the day.
So it makes total sense what you're saying about the IPAs. Just don't really stick to your recipe. Just make whatever you can get fresh.
Yeah, exactly. So you just nailed it. It's just like being a chef, and you want to have the freshest, best raw materials, and let them sing, and give them a chance to live by giving it really healthy, fresh yeast. And you'll make great beer.
Make the yeast happy.
Yes.
So they can do the work like the instant. Yeah, it's like make them happy. That's the thing.
What's that saying? Brewers are the yeast or the actual.
It's the thing that makes the beer.
And the brewers are just there to.
Yeah, the yeast makes the beer.
We work for the yeast.
We give the yeast, obviously, the raw materials for they to shine and do their work.
Yeah.
So I wanna ask the last question. It's like
not
no, it's not the last one.
Second to last.
Almost.
It's maybe
they sort of have to do with each other. So
it's like a future plans of Firestone, future beers. What do you have in mind right now? What you're getting out from your mind?
Yeah, well, so during COVID times in the last year, we weren't able to do events. We weren't able to go out and pour beer at festivals, and so in our idle hours, we started a beer club. And the Firestone Beer Club, what we call the Brewmasters Collective, has been this amazing opportunity for us to do a lot of experimental beers. You guys had some of the barrel-aged beers coming out of the vintage program that you were drinking. And so the club really focuses on a lot of that kind of, higher end beer experience. Yeah, barrel aged beer experience.
Man, this thing was a treat.
Yeah, and so what we've been trying to do is invite in some really awesome brewers from around the country to do collaborations with. We just had Josh Freem from Freem Family Breweries in Mount Hood come in, and we did a saison with him. We had Corey from Side Project come, and we made this super extreme stout that will age for 2 years before we release it. But and so a lot of the new and exciting stuff is, again, the incubator is between the Propagator in Los Angeles and this club that we've started up. And it's really inspired a lot of really creative brewing. And, so despite the size and scale of the brewery, we still have some of these small projects going on that are really driving a lot of the innovation that we're doing.
Nice.
Awesome.
So, could we see
most important question in the entire show?
Yeah,
the most important. This one,
the most important for us.
last one is the most
us.
important. That's right. Could we see Firestone in the near future in Puerto Rico?
So our sister brewery, Boulevard Brewing Company, they do export beers to Puerto Rico, correct?
Yep.
You can get
Right.
Tank 7, and you can get some of the beautiful beers from Kansas City there.
Mhm.
And they're our sister brewery. So there's probably a better than 50% chance, I would say, that we might take advantage of that partnership and maybe get some beers there. I'm just the brewer. I don't make those decisions. But, I certainly love the idea, and I love more the idea of coming and visiting you guys and experiencing the
Oh
beers.
man, that would be freaking amazing.
Yeah, man.
That'd be a treat for us. And yes, we do have we get Boulevard here, we get Omegang.
Omegang as well, yeah.
Yeah.
I had the chance to visit Omegang a couple of years back with one of the local distributors here, the guys that are bringing it to PR, and when we were there, we had their neon rainbows for the first time. It was sort of a new beer when we went there, and we ended up talking them into sending it to PR, and now it's like literally one of the best-selling craft beers on the island.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? I mean, and isn't it a beautiful brewery as well in upstate New York? I mean, I feel like it's maybe one of the most beautiful breweries I've ever been to, and there's so much tradition there. They're celebrating 25 years of brewing in Cooperstown. They have some beautiful Belgian beers like Hennepin, which I'm just
Hennepin was oh man.
Yeah, we're lucky enough to get all those in PR. It would be fantastic to be able to add Firestone to even if it's only a couple of styles. I totally get what you were talking about earlier.
I think we should start with sending some barrel aged beers, and then see how it goes. Then I'll come and visit. I'll have to inspect and do some quality control. And
man,
you have to go. You have to go to Puerto Rico.
Yes, sir.
Anytime.
I'm sure Joey and the guys at the distributor will be more than happy to just take you around a tour of the island, visit spots and just look.
We came along. We came along.
Oh, for sure, we will tag along and have a beer. No, I mean it would be more than an honor. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Matt, what is your social media from Firestone? Your personal social media?
Yeah, so boy, am I going to get this right? So it's always firestonebeer.com, but of course you can just Google Firestone Walker and everything comes up. And then myself personally, you can follow me at FW_brewmaster. So Firestone Walker _.
We got it right. There it is. Yeah, it's on the screen.
We have it.
Yeah. So, follow me. I basically just post all sorts of beer stuff and beer geekery and, occasionally what I'm eating, I suppose, or whatever.
Nice.
Matt, find out, talk to the people. So you can talk to
That's
the
your
Puerto Rican
love for
people
beer.
or the Latin American people, the people in the whole world, because this is the number one podcast in the world. So
Wow. Thanks for inviting me. That's awesome.
It's an honor for us. Yeah.
No, man, it's really a pleasure. you have so much great stuff that so much knowledge, so much fantastic knowledge about the industry
Yeah.
of everything that we love about it. It was an honor to talk to you, to have a beer with you.
Yeah,
We love your
want
beers.
to have your beer with us.
Definitely wish I could have them more often. But I look forward to visiting Firestone someday for sure.
You guys are welcome
We have to go there,
anytime. We'd
yeah.
love to show you the brewery. So please don't be a stranger. And hey, great questions. It was a great podcast, you guys. Nice work.
Thank you.
We try to do our best. Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate
Kike,
it.
before we go, your media, some social
Yeah.
media, Kike.
Henry
Also.
Des, Instagram, Facebook, Enrique Fernandez, La Esquinita Jardín Cervecero, our
Nice.
bar. If you ever need a beer, we're always there. Hopefully, sometime in the future, I can sell you a bottle of Parabola or some magic
Oh,
liquid. that
yeah,
Matt
something
makes.
like that. Yeah.
Or maybe
maybe the Pivo pills.
the Pivo
in
pills,
the- in the
yeah.
liquor. Oh,
On the
yeah.
liquid tab. That would be a dream come true.
Arturo, tell me your social media also. Arturo, dímelo.
En Facebook, Arturo Ferrer. Y en Instagram, Minimalist. Mira, ¿cómo es?
Ahí está.
Con la X, ya.
Mira cómo es Arturo. Aquí.
No te sabes.
Mira, ahora yo.
Y Jole.
Mira, con mi camisa de Santurce Brewery, saludo a los muchachos de Santurce, a Adrián y a Juan Palermo, los quiero mucho. La camisita de Santurce Brewery. Pues amigos, me consiguen en Facebook, aquí está Jorge K. Ramón.
Ariel está ahí.
En Instagram bajo Ramones Brew. Y pues nada, antes de irnos, thank you, Matt, again,
don't go, Matt.
for your time.
Yeah, after the outro,
I'll-
we'll take a quick screenshot with you, Matt. If you can stick around for like a minute more, that'd be great.
So before we go, thank you again. Gracias nuevamente, Matt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So, gracias a todos y a todas por estar aquí en esta noche. Aquí directamente, yo estoy aquí directamente desde Washington DC. Y nada, como decía mi abuela, ¿dónde está aquí? Vamos a buscar esto. Aquí. Como decía mi abuela, salud
y pesetas.
Y pesetas. Ay.
Cheers. Awesome.
Cheers, you guys.
Buenas noches. Gracias a todos por conectarse.
Llévatelo.
Gracias.